All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I'm Is There No One Else? In the video I'm bringing you today, I wanted to talk about an argument I've been seeing on the forums and literally everywhere since the news dropped that we are going to have no proc Cyrodiil for the next 5 or 6 months. And that is going to be, the argument I've been seeing is we need these sets because now my class isn't going to be viable. Now this class is going to be super overpowered and strong, and we're going to have unbalanced Cyrodiil, yada, yada, yada. And it's been going around a lot. I've talked about this in a few different patches, and I wanted to talk about it again on my thoughts on this and why I think this is the wrong way to look at things. So yeah, that's what this video is. Let's begin. In my opinion, we should be balancing classes and we should be balancing sets separately. We should not be looking at sets as a way to crutch or prop up a specific class. And the reasoning behind that is if it makes one class viable, it probably makes another class overtuned and way overpowered. And so we will always have imbalance in a PvP environment, like severe imbalance, when we're looking at those sorts of situations. The other thing is when you have sets that literally crutch for a class in one way or another, and they're overtuned in that way, people for that class, for their favorite class, do not get the buffs that they deserve because they're essentially satiated for a patch or two. They're like, okay, well, yeah, my class isn't super good, but because I'm running this one super nice set, everything's okay, and I'm not going to complain because I have this set. Well, when that set eventually gets adjusted because other classes can abuse the crap out of it, and it makes it really overtuned, and it's unhealthy for PvP, all of a sudden you lose the set that makes your class viable, and your class goes back to nothing because you were relying on a set for balance that really shouldn't have happened to begin with. So this happened a while back. I had a discussion with a guy on the forums about this back in Greymoor when all of this most recent proc nonsense began. So back in Greymoor, if you guys remember, they were going to Kalurian's Legacy was going to proc off of direct damage. Now it doesn't now because they fixed it during the PTS, but it was going to proc off direct damage every 10 seconds, which means it could be buffed by markarth. So it has a 20k tooltip, meaning that it was going to do 25k tooltip damage, meaning it was going to hit for like 8 to 11, 12k in PvP every 10 seconds. And I did a couple videos on it, talked about it on the forums, how basically the damage dealt on that was going to be ridiculously overtuned, and it was going to be the best in slot for literally every class in the game and no CP, probably just about every class in CP as well. 10k burst on every single class, because you can count to 10, was going to be powerful. And it was going to be so good, even classes like Stamina Necromancer were probably going to run that type of set because they could go 3 jewelry, 2H, or 2 jewelry, 1 body, 2H, and get that proc every 10 seconds. So a 10k tooltip blast bones with, or 10k burst blast bones with 10k burst Kalurians with a 10k DB, all this stuff just lining up and just melting health bars. It would have been busted on a few different specs, absolutely busted. And so I got to talk with a guy in the forums about it, and we had a conversation, and he was talking about how we need this set. This set was fine the way it was before. There's no need to nerf or adjust this set because it makes melee Magicka Nightblade viable. And guys, you don't know this about me, but every single time a new patch comes out, I do whatever I can to make a melee Magicka Nightblade build. Melee Magicka Nightblade is one of my favorite specs that has been it's been gone for far too long, and I miss it, and I try to make something work. I'm going to try and make something work this next patch and the patch afterwards. That's just what I do, and it's frustrating because it's not a very good class, and it has been like, I know as well as this guy does that the only thing that really makes melee Magblade competitive is Kalurians, because Kalurians is guaranteed to proc with concealed weapon, and so you get the stun. Kalurians lands a lot, it's a lot of burst, and it makes up for the lack of burst in that class's spec. The class is absolutely, like, you don't see melee Magblades because it doesn't work without Kalurians. It just doesn't work. And so I talked to him about it, and I kind of explained my point of view, and yeah, it holds back adjustments and buffs that melee Magicka Nightblade need to be a viable competitive class. And so if you're relying on a set or a pair of sets for your class to be viable, how strong is your class really? Like, they adjust sets all the time because different sets can become problematic on other classes. And so when you look at Colurians in that instance, yeah, it makes melee magic a Nightblade viable, but it's busted on every other spec in the game that has a decent burst toolkit, because literally 40 to 50k health, everybody was going to be dying with that specific set. And that was going to be ridiculous. And everybody was going to run it, which isn't in the interest of class balance. It's not in the interest of balance if it's so good that every class in the game can run it and probably will run it because it's that good. And so that's my main argument, and that's why in my opinion, we balance classes. We balance classes and we flesh out their kits to make them more competitive and make them more viable regardless of the meta. Because metas come and go, metas shift due to multiple different things, buffs of certain skills and abilities, nerfs of different skills and abilities, introductions of new sets. All this stuff happens all the time. And there are a lot of classes that really hinge on the adjustment to a meta, which is why I think you get the backlash that you get in the forums, because their classes are either really good or really bad depending on what's going on. So currently, I'm on a Magic and Necromancer. You guys see it? Magic and Necromancers are really, really good with procs. They have a lot of built-in class healing. They have a lot of mitigation. Spirit Guardian's 10% damage mitigation. They have 15% dot mitigation on top of that as a passive. They also have a class purge. So they have all this incoming healing, purges, dot mitigation. Most of the procs are dots. It makes them very, very effective in this environment. So they can abuse procs as good as anybody. Magic and Necromancer lacks a little bit in the class toolkit department because a lot of their burst is very disjointed. It's very disjointed. It's very reliant on what your opponent's doing, and it makes it kind of slow and clunky. It's not as good as other classes from in a stat-based environment. Everybody kind of knows this. Like when you run stat-based PvP, you don't really see many Necromancers outside of like group bombers and stuff. And even then, that kit got nerfed a little bit, and so it doesn't hit as hard as it used to. And so this class is very reliant on having a bunch of proc damage to be very, very competitive. Other classes in the other direction, Magsork, aren't as good in a proc environment, and they're really, really strong in a stat-based environment because all the proc dots melt their shields and they can't really be competitive. And everybody's seen it. Like a Sork, you look at a Sork and they're just gone because they can't deal with proc dots. But luckily, I mean, they have Streak that allows them to get away from just about everything. But next patch, they're going to be one of the strongest specs in the game because the proc dots aren't there anymore. They can use stats well. They can be more competitive, and they have one of the best defensive kits. And so when I talk about these changes, we can do things in both directions. We can buff Magsork in some ways to make them more viable regardless of the meta, you know, flesh out their overall toolkit to give them more capabilities to survive in different environments. And we can also address, you know, how ridiculous Streak is, for instance, how much people can just get away with Streak and why the cost reduction should have never happened, in my opinion. So they can go both ways. Everybody likes a guy that can go both ways, you know? So that's my point. A lot of these classes can be fleshed out. If we look at like a class like Stamina Necromancer, Stamina Warden, they both have stuff. They both have things that need to be adjusted. You know, Stamina Necromancer, for instance, I think Mortal Coil's heal should be reduced. I think Mortal Coil should cost something. I think Spirit Guardian does too much damage mitigation. I think that the passive dot is too much damage mitigation. It makes for a very overtuned defensive kit. But what I really like about Stamina Necromancer is its versatility. Its ability to be powerful in a group. Its ability to be powerful in a solo and small scale environment. Its ability to be powerful even with those adjustments that I'm talking about, regardless of the meta that you're in. So if you want to run procs, you can run procs. If you want to run dual wield, you can run dual wield. They have a bunch of different things going for them that makes that class powerful and fun regardless of the environment. More classes need to be like Necromancer. So we need to look at how we can flesh out different skills and abilities, because some classes it's like you have to run this set of skills, you have to run these sets of abilities, and you need to hope that they don't screw the meta and just completely screw your class, because then you're just going to be unhappy the whole time. In my opinion, if you're annoyed because a class is strong during a meta, you're kind of telling on yourself, because in my opinion, all classes should be strong. All classes should be viable. All classes should have their ways to compete, because it's more fun that way. It's not fun to run across a class for most people, for at least for me, and just know that I'm going to win because I have a built-in advantage in my kit, and know that I'm going to win because of that and not because, you know, I played better. It's just, that's just something I disagree with. And so if you're on the forums or if you're in Discord or something and you're like, oh man, now Magsork's going to be really powerful. Well, yeah, they were always going to be really powerful in this environment. And instead of putting a band-aid on the fixes and talking about what really makes them tick defensively and how we should get adjustments to streak, it's been patched over because they weren't strong in other ways due to the proc meta, and it never got talked about. And because we've had procs for 9 months, we haven't been able to get Magicka Necromancer the stat buffs that they need, more damage capabilities to their kit that are more viable in PvP. Same with Magicka Warded, and same with melee Magicka Nightblade. If we can buff out these kits and make them more viable regardless of the patch that we're in, people won't be so upset when it's a proc meta or when it's a stat meta or whatever, because their classes will be more viable. So then you balance sets and you make sets more competitive regardless of whatever. And then you bring in and you flesh out these kits to make them more competitive regardless of whatever environment that we're in. And everybody's more or less happy. Like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna have to change my build. I have to adjust some stuff because the meta's kind of changed, but my class will be viable. That's the big thing, is how viable are classes. And right now, some of them are very, very much hinge on how powerful or on what the meta is. And I don't think that's healthy. I think we get these big sways, and I think we get a lot of backlash in the community because of these big sways, because you either play a class that is getting nerfed and you're not happy about it, or you're playing against a class that is getting buffed and you're not happy about it because you're now upset that you're going to just get dominated and you don't really have a choice. You don't really have a chance. And so, yeah, that's just my opinion on it. Like I said, I've been seeing a lot of comments on this in different environments, and I just disagree with the thoughts. Like I think we need to look at kits. I think we need to look at changing them laterally so that they're more versatile, so that classes are more versatile and viable, and they have more defensive and offensive capabilities besides the same kit that every single class has to run, because that's all they have. I think there's other things that can be done. And so that's what I talk about. When I talk about class strength on my class ranks, I take into mind the current meta that we're in, and also what the meta could change to in the future. How resistant to the meta are some of these classes? And some of them, in my opinion, are very resistant, and some not so much. Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, obviously it's just a difference in opinion. This is just how I would go about doing things, because I think it just makes it easier. I think it makes it healthier in PvP. I think it allows people to play their favorite class and be viable, because nothing is more frustrating than playing a class and just knowing that you can't really do anything regardless of how well you play, because your kit just doesn't allow you to. That's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide in the section below. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.